Again, you heard me say over and over and over again, every election matters. 2020, 2022. I told you that these crazy nutcase people like Moms for Liberty were going to be coming after school board races. That's exactly what happened. A lot of us didn't turn out. A lot of us didn't vote. And all across the South, Florida, North Carolina, South Carolina, and other places, these Moms for Liberty candidates have been taking over school district boards, and one of the first things they've been doing is firing black superintendents. Well, guess what? It's come to Charleston, South Carolina. Again, here in Charleston, South Carolina, a black superintendent who's been only on the job since July is now on administrative leave. Why? Because there was a 5-4 vote by the board during Monday night's meeting of the Charleston County School Board of Trustees, where Dr. Gallien was placed on leave. One of the board members who voted against placing Gallien on leave joins us from Charleston, Courtney Waters. Courtney, glad to have you on Roland Martin Unfiltered. He was supposed to present a report of what he's been doing, plan of action, since taking over. Never got a chance to do that, correct?
He eventually did that after he had been placed on administrative leave. He actually suffered the indignity of having to continue that meeting.
So you're on the board. Any reason given why he's on administrative leave?
Yes. Essentially, there was a claim made by an employee, and he was put on paid administrative leave as that claim is being investigated.
There's a claim. Is it workplace harassment? Is it he was mean to them?
It is hostile work environment.
Okay, so one employee makes a claim of a so-called hostile work environment, and the action of the board is to immediately go to administrative leave? Is that what normally happens?
No, never. So typically there are numerous processes that are followed prior to taking any action against the superintendent, but this was done under the guise of protecting him so that he could be away from her as this investigation continued. But it's very important to name that just 2 weeks ago at a meeting, there was an executive session called at the last minute to discuss his contract. And during that time, we discussed several different items, reasons why he might be terminated. And so this has been a calculated effort.
Okay, did he just get the job in July?
He just got the job in July.
So all of a sudden, we got massive problems?
Sure. And we're not really told. We don't. So, of course, I'm on the other side. So I'm not sure exactly why. I can't say factually why the tide has turned. But essentially, this man came into office early July, and by July 17th, the four of us who voted against him being put on paid administrative leave found ourselves in a position of trying to convince the board to overturn a decision not to allow the superintendent to hire or make organizational changes. Now, to be clear, that action that was taken on May 18th preceded his arrival and had to do with the interim superintendent not making any changes until a new superintendent arrived. However, about a week after he arrived, the board was like, no, he can't make any changes. He just got here. We're not handing him the keys to the kingdom. And so what is assumed in the community is that there was some conversation had or maybe some information shared about, him that made the Moms for Liberty faction of the board believe that he would be a radical, and they started to oppose every change that he's tried to make in this district.
I'm confused because normally when somebody is named superintendent, you actually hire them to run the district. You hire them to make changes. You hire them so they can hire people and hire staff. You don't hire somebody to be superintendent and then have the board of trustees basically run the school district.
Not only that, but our policies actually say that we are supposed to operate at a policy level, and we are not supposed to deal in the strategic choices or the administration of the district. And so, of course, his contract says that he's allowed to manage the district in all the ways that that are required. He's allowed to choose staff. He's allowed to fire staff. But this board has put an action in place that actually contradicts our policies and his contract.
Okay. So you sign somebody to a contract to do the things that you're supposed to do to lead the contract, and then when he signs the contract, then they go, nah, forget what the contract says. We ain't let you do any of that.
Essentially, that's exactly what happened, and it's been shown, demonstrated through several actions. It wasn't just, he tried to bring a chief of schools to the district, because this is a man, by the way, who's probably the only CEO or commander in chief in America who has not been able to choose his own staff. He is working with the staff that existed in the district prior to him arriving, many of whom actually applied for the role. But these Moms for Liberty folks have cozied up to certain folks in the district, and so there's this sort of organized strategy to stop him in his tracks at any cost.
This is so. When did this 5 majority come into play?
So they came into play last November. I'm the only board member who had already served on the board previously, and so the entire board is new. This faction came out of nowhere, and they all won by very slim margins. Every one of them ended up, all but 2 of them, ended up in a race where there were multiple candidates who were much more moderate or left-leaning, and they split all of the votes, and these folks edged in at very slim margins.
Wow. Questions from our panel. Nyambi, you first.
Hi, Courtney. Thank you for joining us. So what is the plan with Dr. Gallien? I mean, at this point, he's only been allowed, to do nothing and is now on administrative leave. So is this tantamount to firing, or is the hope that he will get tired and resign? Like, what is the plan here?
So the plan is that the community, so the beautiful thing in our community right now is that folks are responding. If I could name any silver lining here, is that our community is mobilized. You wouldn't believe the number of calls, texts, emails. We've been on the phone all day long with people saying, what can we do? The principals are like, let's organize a walkout. There are folks in the community asking. And so we're convening people to decide how we're going to strategically hold them to the fire. I immediately sent a note last night as soon as I got home and said, I expect that this investigation moves swiftly, and that it's not some smokescreen just to keep him out of work. And so we were told by the chair that counsel had reached out to his counsel. We made sure that his counsel gets to be involved in the selection of the investigation firm, because at this point, the integrity of it all is compromised.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Larry.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for, coming on the show. I guess my question is, it sounds like legally, and look, I'm not a lawyer, but it sounds like you talked about his contract. It sounds like the board could be in breach of contract and find itself in a serious situation when it comes to liability. What are your thoughts about that?
So my thoughts are, these are taxpayers' dollars, and most of the taxpayers agree that it was a huge waste of resources to go through a search and then hire a man at a very significant salary and then decide it doesn't matter. However, what people need to understand about these Moms for Liberty folks is that they've got a very clear agenda and assignment, and none of that matters to them. How much money they spend on this doesn't matter nearly as much as when they scrutinize academic programs that they then reject or narrowly pass through, because their assignment is, we are going to control who is working on behalf of children, what information is presented to them, and they are doing this systematically through committee work, through policies, et cetera. So it doesn't matter that we are going to be on the losing end of a lawsuit, because the objective is clear. It's not education related, but it is a very clear objective.
Mm-hmm.
Mustafa.
Yeah, first of all, thank you for everything you're doing. Thank you for that last comment also, because folks really need to pay attention to these power dynamics that are playing out both in your city and across the country. Just for folks who are watching, has there ever been anyone else in this position that has had to face a similar set of actions?
The only time before that I know of is the one time we had a Black woman superintendent, Dr. Maria Goodloe Johnson, and she was run out of town.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for that, because I knew the history there. I wanted everybody else to know it as well.
Mm-hmm. And Courtney, the reality is, all across South Carolina, where Moms for Liberty took over school boards, they've done this exact same thing. They've run out Black superintendents.
Yes, and what's interesting is that they tend to replace them with black superintendents, and so it neutralizes the claim of discrimination. But if you look beneath the surface, it is there. But of course, in terms of legal standing, then no one can identify a pattern. So what they're essentially doing is finding someone that they're okay with, right? And this is no condemnation on those individuals because I don't know them personally. I know what's going on in my district, but they tend to find neutral individuals who will either not stand in the way of their bidding or will support their bidding, and they go with that candidate versus who is sitting in the seat who has expressed that there are issues. And I would also name that the big issue in our district, because last night not only did they place the superintendent on administrative leave, they also denied the hiring of a chief academic officer permanently. We had a born and raised graduate of Burke High School who has served as a teacher, a principal, an associate superintendent of elementary schools, and as interim chief academic officer during a moment when I'm sorry, I have a 4-year-old.
We got you. Don't worry about it. Go ahead.
Who served also as interim chief. You got to be quiet if you're going to stand right here. Okay. Who served also as chief academic officer during record progress for our students. So for the first time in our school's history, our district's history, we have all subgroups improving in reading. That's never happened in Charleston County. Okay. And they denied the confirmation of this woman who had been interviewed by an external panel. Never has that happened before. So this is far more than just one individual they're targeting.
Again, this is what happens, and I keep saying to our people, when we do not maximize our vote, these folks are able to squeak in, take over, and then they control power. When is the next school board election?
So November 2024. However, 3 of our 4 seats are open, and only 1 of the Moms for Liberty candidate seats is open.
So their seats are 4-year seats?
Yeah, so the reason that, so I've had 2 2-year terms. Our delegation set in place a new law a few years ago, and taking us from at-large elections to single-member districts.
Right.
That it was decided that all of the even-numbered districts would start with 2-year terms and the odd-numbered districts would have 4. And so they knew that. They had laid this plan long ago, and they made sure that they got their candidates in those longer-term seats while our community really wasn't paying attention to that level of strategy.
So those seats are not up till 2026?
Correct. But if we can change just one of them, we would have the 5 and they would have the 4. So there is still hope, and I hold on to that all the time.
When you say if we change one of the 5, so one of those 5 seats is up in 2024?
Yes.
Gotcha. All right. Well, certainly keep us abreast of that particular seat because, and like I keep saying, there has to be, again, long-term thinking when it comes to these races. Courtney, we certainly appreciate it. Good luck. Keep us abreast of what happens to this brother.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.